So I, in my space, am an old head. That is, I've taken on the uncle moniker. I had to hold that for a second because that uncle term has a lot of other baggage, considering the vastness of my audience. But I knew it came from love, and it was also coming from the babies that look like me. So I was like, all right, let me hold that. They want that. They need that. I got that. We're gonna do that. So I'm an old head, but to me, you're an old head, which I got goosebumps right now. Because I don't get to engage with my old heads a lot anymore. Most of them, I wouldn't want to engage with a lot, to be honest. And so, in particular, you, like one of your first entries into these politics in this world is hip hop. And we're not talking like, for me, it was the mid '90s, so like the Roots and Nas and the Wu-Tang Clan. You're going back to Big Daddy Kane.
Before that.
Before that. And so we got to engage with some real audience. This is a rare treat because the real hip hop old heads don't even want to talk to y'all. Just keeping it a buck. They don't even want to deal with y'all. All right. So Dr. Ball is blessing us with his presence around here.
Okay.
What is, so first off, what are some things about that era of hip hop that mid 80s, into the early 90s era that has, aged out of the discourse that just, that you think fondly of, and then your perspectives on aging with hip hop. That's a piece I'm been planning on the back ends with Nebula is I call it dad rap, right? Because you see like Nas, I don't know how much you've kept up, but like Nas has dropped like 3 or 4 albums. They're some of his best work in the last couple of years. And they're all, they're all aged. The tone is completely different. You go to 444 with Jay-Z, and despite the fact that it's a lot of nonsense, it's nonsense that I would expect an old nigga with money to say. Right. You know what I'm saying? Busta did it. Busta got songs about child support issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all like, okay, so like clearly we've left the woo-ha got you all in check era of my heyday, and rappers are rapping about aging and aging with like manhood and like reflecting. So like, I wonder about the reflection upon the current moment. But first, let's get some old head takes. If I said old head enough, Chad, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Right. It's like, damn. No. So, because I know, in the interest of time, I would just want to say that, like my man Dr. Burroughs used to say all the time about this, being able to have grown up and watched rap and hip hop emerge from, and remember that it didn't always exist. It sort of crescendoed at a moment around the late 80s where we felt like we were going to win, as he said. Like there was this general feeling of we've overcome the initial baby steps of existence. We've overcome the initial backlash from both white and black media that was saying this is a fad, this is childish, we don't want this to exist. This is embarrassing, even as some of the, black radio initially didn't even want to touch rap music. They were like, you're making us look bad. We're trying to do R&B and try to jazz and, you're ghetto-fying our post-civil rights moment. You're ruining it.
I never forget. I think it was Cameo had that one song where he dissed rap in the middle of it. It might have been like Word Up, which is ironic because it was Cameo, the dude from Cameo with the. It's so funny because he got the cod pieces talk about and you all look silly and the high fade. Cameo. Surely you're a Cameo.
And please, I mean, we grew up looking at Parliament Funkadelic and early Earth, Wind and Fire. Nobody looked crazier than that. And Prince, my God, Prince was rest in peace to the genius, the God himself. Exactly. But it was a class thing. It was a class problem. It was the ghetto rising that was a problem for everybody. And nobody wanted that. And then along with it came some of the messages that they didn't want to hear. We don't like being broke. We might get a little upset. We might even get a little violent if you keep imposing all this poverty on us. So there was like all this holdup now. But part of what I've come to realize, and I'm pretty clear on at this point, is that my generation missed some things that in our defense initially of this new art and this new approach to art, that is itself born out of material conditions and Pan-African experience and colonization and access to European technology, and all of that coalesces into this thing. But one of the things I think we missed is that from the beginning, there was a commercial engagement. I mean, the Sugar Hill Gang, Sylvia Robinson, a Black woman, creates a fake group, taking other people's raps, renames people, and creates this, so the very first, Sugar Hill, right, that everybody is already a capitalist commercial product that is fake. I mean, we have to, it's not in terms of, so we missed this, and then really what as I've come to argue, the C. Dolores Tucker argument, we missed that some of the criticism that the older generation was saying was in fact correct, that there was a corporate involvement that was going to select a version of our expression to magnify the worst, to both make money from, but to give imaged protection for the maltreatment of. So as hip hop has emerged and created a handful of very rich people, the Black communities that produced it are worse off today economically. The South Bronx that people talk about that produced the original form is worse off today, is politically weaker today. So this idea that we've browned America and paved the way for an Obama presidency, which is depicted as the dominant narrative as a positive, I would say is the negative. It is a potentially revolutionary art form that has inspired radical movements and thought, has been largely co-opted and turned into something that Fanon said would testify against the original producers of the art. So today, one of the differences that most people in my generation point to that you all don't see, I think, as much, in the dominant commercial form, we had just initially a wider variety.
Yeah,
because
I said the same thing.
The conquering hadn't taken over yet. Yeah,
even from like that 90s to 2000s era. So we're already past the first like wave of commodification of this Black art form, because that starts with but doesn't start. It probably hits its stride with NWA, and then you see like that continue. But I still had Diggable Planets and all these other people in the 90s. And I'll never forget hearing Dead Prez in 99, 2000, and thinking to myself, that made me uncomfortable as a little Black boy in the suburbs, right? Brought up under the talented tent doctrine. I remember thinking to myself, it's so funny when I hear that album again now, I'm like, how did this even make it to the airwaves? These were some bad boys to get, I'm an African and it's bigger than hip hop, and they schools on the airwaves like they did, and never again. Them boys I don't know. Well, I know, I've heard people tell me, they was like, look, we good. We got this change. We ain't about to hip hop with y'all forever because we don't fuck with y'all like that. I don't know if
Dead Prez did that?
Yeah, I've heard people say that whole attitude was like, we're not trying to be, like, I think a lot of the more radical figures, or at least figures that are resistant to the commodification, once they got to that taste of success, they were like, we don't really want a part of this.
Oh, I don't agree with that with Dead Prez. I mean, Dead Prez.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, first of all, they after that initial relative success, they were shelved and marginalized, and their successive records and mixtapes didn't get nearly the level of attention, because just like Chuck D had told me years ago in an interview of Public Enemy, I think Dead Prez had a similar experience. He said that Public Enemy's rise initially was an accident. The record label didn't, and Public Enemy's very first cassette tape that I had was, my 98 Booming with a Trunk of Funk. It was just, I got a nice car and a big stereo. It wasn't this radical message. They changed, got put on tour with the Beastie Boys. By then it was too late. They were already famous. The message was out. Everybody, the gates would have to close again later. But with Dead Prez, it was like, whoops, we let this one whoops. Same thing with, there was a number of things happening. The neo soul movement at that time. You had Black Star's album came out around that time. They were all working together. Common was still a radical at that time instead of making movies and self-help books. And
that's kind of what I mean. I think about like Mos Def basically saying, so you explained it in a more accurate way. It's kind of me saying once they ran up against the machine and the machine told them what it would require for them to continue, they were like, we'd rather not. But
Dead Prez, I think, was a little bit different in that and I remember I've had the pleasure of meeting and talking with them, and was initially even working on a project with Stick for a minute, but their bigger issue, I think, was they were immediately marginalized, and as they said, they ended up having the same problem Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley had in their careers. They couldn't reach their black audiences, so they could get a bigger white audience. The white college radio would play them, the white, true hip hop, whatever but commercial black radio would never play Dead Prez. So you go to a Dead Prez show, as I've done a number of times, they have this huge white audience.
Right.
And it would become this issue for them. This is like, we're not really talking to you, and you all really don't like our politics. For real, not for real, for real.
I know how that feels.
Well, so I mean, but with other people, like, and I've heard even, Talib has had, a few shots taken at his comrades. Like, I think with others that appealed once that door opens and they're like, hey, be in a movie. Hey, do a Coke commercial. Hey, do a Toyota commercial. It starts to, and then once you hit that to get quickly to the point about the old head rap, to maintain that level, to stay within that star system, you have to constantly recreate yourself as acceptable to the machine. So yes, we might hear Jay-Z and Busta and Nas even talk a little bit about fatherhood and this and that, but what I haven't fully heard, I got to go back and listen a little more carefully given what you've even just said, but what I often don't hear is an advance in politics and analysis and understanding. Like Jay-Z, his economic analysis has gotten worse. But there is a recognition. He's even acknowledged this when he talked years ago about slowing down his cadence. And I would want to rhyme like Common and Talib and the Roots, but I don't want to do numbers like the Roots. So he made a conscious, I'm going to give what I know is going to sell, and I'm going to sell it like I used to sell dope, and I'm going to manage this, in a very, like he said, I'm a businessman, not a businessman. So he's like, I am a bit, whatever he was saying. The point is, and I think to a certain extent, anyone who wants to have a career, and by the way, in or outside of music, and it applies to academia, if you want a certain level of success and acceptance and invitation, there is at a certain point, a certain conscious, I have to tweak this and tweak that, and then, at the levels they're talking about.
Before we run out of here, though, what is your relationship with modern rap at this point? Are you, checking out who's like Jid is one I like. I like 21 Savage a lot. My
youngest loves him.
I'm a Southern. I realize even though I'm from Chicago and I grew up a hip hop backpacking snob, when I got to Atlanta, it was all about Southern rap. I love Southern rap so much. Don't nothing do it for me like a good bass line, some of those funk elements they throw in there. And so to me, 21 Savage has inherited like the space of Bun B. You know what I mean? 8-Ball MJG. He's got a lot of that energy just in the way he flows with so effortlessly versus a performance flow of like a J. Cole, like he got a I don't raise my voice flow, you know what I mean? And so that gets me every time. Some people, Isaiah Rashad, so yeah, they putting all the new people in the chat. I don't know half these people. I don't know who Corday is.
NBA young boy.
I've never heard a whole song of his. I'm sorry. So what are you doing with the new cat?
So
what is your opinion?
First, is it true? Does Big Daddy Kane have a point that there are the big moniker has disappeared and been replaced by little? Are there no big such and such and such anymore?
Any big?
That seems wild to me. Anyway, to be honest, I don't have a real relationship with this generation's rap music, and it's not to hate. It's just I am a cliche of an older man, and part of it is that what I've come to realize is. And it's not to judge the quality. In fact, I can recognize, so my relationship comes mostly through my students in my hip hop classes. And I invite mixtapes and I invite students to share with me their music and what they're listening to. We get into it very, in some ways, very in deep ways. But in general, what I find myself, like I want everybody to put more clothes on. I want to hear less about people's sex lives and experiences of young people. And in some ways I feel even when doing it as an assignment for class, almost voyeuristic in some of the, these are very young people relative to me, certainly at this point, and they're saying some very explicit things. Some of them are my daughter's ages, and I feel a little kind of way about it. I'm like, I don't need to be, hate. Like, you have your moment. Like, let me give you your time to explore and do your thing, like I did mine. But I don't need to hear it. And I've been enjoying what I've enjoyed with that is I kind of like knowing that the kids are still behaving irresponsibly in their lifetime. No question. Like I love what Ice Spice has done to the boys. I don't know if you're familiar with Ice Spice. She's the most. I know who she is, but
And the way these boys are responding to Ice Spice, I'm like, y'all got it. I love y'all for that. Go in there, announce your muchness, but also like, you're right in that like it's not for me. And so I kind of like be like, yeah, that's cool, that's cute. Y'all do your thing. So she doing a little dance.
I'm going in the other direction. For those from the DC area, I'm in my grown man go-go these days. I can't. The live percussion and all of that is where I'm at lately. But again, no disrespect. And I tell my students all the time, and what I've come to really appreciate is that I think for the most part, the sophistication with the cadence of the rhyming cadences has improved. I do miss some of my boom bap and some of my early, forms of DJ Premier and Pete Rock sampling and all of that. But the cadences, I don't think it's really arguable that it's gotten more sophisticated and interesting, even if I don't necessarily feel the content or whatever as much. But and I do like what you're saying. I get it. I want everybody, look, everybody deserves a moment of debaucherousness and irresponsibility to a certain extent. You know what I mean? But be safe, but I just don't need to.
Don't expect me to get down with y'all. How weird would that be? Like if I be trying to tell folks like, you don't understand, like I have so much love and respect for y'all, but don't ask me to come to y'all things. I'm 41 years old. I do not belong there. I'm dropping my kids off at soccer practice. I am not busting it wide open with anybody.
Look, like I said, I love go-go, but the last time I taught high school in DC, I had to chaperone one of those go-go high school, sweat boxes. And I was like, I feel very uncomfortable and I have to be here to be responsible for you. But this is not. So I don't need to be the old man in the club, and I don't need to be, but at the same time, I'm not, again, I like you said, I want to respect everybody's chance to be young and to a certain extent, even stupid and ignorant. I mean, to a certain extent, we all need a little bit of room,
There's and one of the things I appreciate about y'all, everybody on BPM is that there's a respectability. It's like, let me prune that a little bit, because one of the things that happens, one of the things I know that made me appreciate about a younger audience is that I was non-judgmental but critical, if that makes sense. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna talk about, the only like really raunchy folks I like are the city girls, and that's because I think for them it's the most honest. I think everybody else is performing raunch, whereas for them, they really live that life, and you can kind of tell through their music on a lot of levels. But we still have to be critical, and we're not going to spend a lot of time here because it's two straight black men. I don't want to get into black one's business, but shout out to, Kim Foster, Khadijah Mbow, Fab, Socialism, and I can't remember her name right now, T Noir, that have gotten into like the kind of like choice feminism of like hypersexuality for black women.
Right.
And so it's like, all right, we want that critique. And I love y'all for it at the same time, but I'm minding my business. Versus like, the challenge of a Cesar Lawrence Tucker not being heard was that it came off so unempathetic to the reality of youth, and of black youth in particular. She was a very problematic person. I'm not defending her and her politics. I'm using my use of her and her work, no disrespect to her, is that
is to just make a point about what my generation, I think, continues to miss in this replication of a flawed hip hop narrative in terms of the history and the positive change it was supposed to have brought to a world that doesn't exist, obviously, as young people are responding to, both in terms of the music and attempted political movements. I mean, whatever we may feel about the criticism of young people's performance politically, musically, or otherwise, it's a response to a society that my generation left them. So like so I think we need to be able to take a moment to look critically at what we got right and wrong. And this is one of we were so correct to want to defend our right to create generationally this thing called hip hop. But we missed some of the political context and what it means, as Harold Cruz asked several generations ago, what happens to your culture when it becomes part of America's cultural store?
Right.
That's
and there's no way y'all could have answered that, and it's an interesting thing, and we'll leave it here. One of the things, this is for you, I got to find me some gurus, because in between my love for hip hop, I dabbled a lot in rock music and metal, and I don't think it's a coincidence that particular art form, which was very working class adjacent for white people, is gone from mainstream.
Interesting.
I haven't perfected that critique yet. It still exists, right? But it's completely underground. And there was an intentional flipping of the rock star for the rap star around my generation of hip hop. And what it's going to take is like a cross-cultural conversation as to like the results, how that happened and what was happening in different pockets at the time. Because when it happened, I think a lot of rap fans and black folks were like, yeah, it's our time. But then we didn't realize it was our time to be like the workhorse of, capitalist media and what that would do to hip hop.
Hey.
Now,
so that's my one-liner for you on the way out, because I know we don't have time to get into it, but the switch that you're just describing is because even white supremacist capital realizes and knows maybe better than we do that you can't sell yourself to white audiences better than with the use of black cultural expression.
Exactly, definitely.
You're not going to sell white capitalism through punk rock the way you can sell it through R&B, hip hop, soul, funk, white adapted country music and rock and roll, etc. You've got to have it. And this country in particular has understood that, given its relationship to black people. So that shift had to occur, And the black participation in guitar music had to be erased too, by the way. There's a beautiful history of that. So I'm glad you got Prince on, because he's
a perfect example. Yeah, we'll see. I thank God for having ideas for projects. Right, I don't know when that one coming. I got to get to my white rapper video first. White rapper video happening this year, y'all. I promise you. White rapper video happening this year. I already talked to Dr. Ball about it. We had a whole side conversation about Eminem that I'm not going to spoil. We'll leave it alone.